Hello YouTube, welcome to a new video. My name is Abuze. On today's video I'm going to show you guys how I create this composite image in Photoshop. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, we are going to be using these files to create the image, and I'll put a link for you to download the images if you want to follow along and practice. So the very first thing we are going to do is we are going to open our image into Photoshop. So the very first thing that we are going to do after we open our image into Photoshop is to duplicate our original layer by pressing Command or Control J. So after we duplicate it, we are going to rename it to our subject layer so that we keep track of our layers as they are increasing. So what we are going to do is we are going to make sure we are selecting our subject layer, and then we go to select and then select subject. So what will happen is Photoshop will do its best to select this subject for us, as you are saying, but it's definitely going to leave some areas that we are going to fix ourselves. So let's try and fix the selection first. I think I'm going to be using our lasso tool here, and then we go to minus and remove the areas where we don't want them to be part of our selection. So that's how we go around the image and check where we should fix, and then we fix them. Here we're going to still be using our lasso tool, and then here we are going to add this part of her head tie. So we are going to go back to close, but in this case we are going to change from lasso tool to polygonal lasso tool. I think it's better in this area. So you just have to look at the area that you are going to fix and decide which of the selection tool will work better. Sorry, instead of me to use plus, I'm using minus. So you have to make sure you are going to plus if you are going to add to your selection, and then if you are minusing, and then you make sure you are on the subtract of your selection tool. And if you want me to create a tutorial on selection tools inside Photoshop, let me know in the comment section and I will try and do that. So then we move the top round and check. Alright, we need this part back to our selection. So I think in this area I will shift the lasso tool. So that's how you'll be moving from one option to another and be fixing your selection. Not that if you start using lasso tool and then you'll be like, I'll be using lasso tool throughout fixing my selection. No, you just have to switch from one option to another until you fully fix your selection. I think that's the only areas we are going to fix that we are having error to fix. So after we make our selection, the very next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add layer mask to the selected subject. So if I disable the background layer, you notice my image now is not having background, which means I have successfully separate the image from the background. So which means now my subject is standing alone out of the background. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go back to our files, and then we import our interior, and then we scale it up until it fits our liking. And then we crop our image to 4:5, as you can see. And then we play around with the crop. I think I think this is okay for now because it's something we can come back and adjust later. So for now, let's leave it like this. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go back to our files, and then we bring in our window into our project, and then we go back to our Photoshop. But here we have to make sure our window layer is above our subject layer. So we are going to push it up, and then we scale it and do some adjustment on it. So after we scale it like this, the adjustment we are going to do is we are going to hide the inner part of the window. How we're going to do that is we are going to go over to our marquee tool, and then we select over the area which we want to hide. As you can see, I think this is okay, and then we press Command Shift I to select, and then we add layer mask to the window, as you can see. So the next thing we are going to do for the window is we are going to adjust it until it fits to how exactly you want to see it on our image. So let's bring back our transform tool, and then we scale the window. Let's try shifting it to this side, and then we hit enter. I think the cropping we are going to do, we need to crop our image more. So that's how we'll be adjusting the image until we are done editing. So everything we have done for now is temporary because we might go over and do some adjustment on it. So for now, let's leave the crop like this, and then we go back to our window, and then we adjust it again. So for now, let's leave the window like this and crop our image a little more, and then we hit enter. So the next thing we are going to do is what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go over to my adjustment layer, and then I go to solid color, and then I will use the color code 562B0C, and then I hit OK. But I'll have to make sure my solid color layer is in between the subject and the window layer. So let's rename the window layer to window so that we can easily keep track on our layer, and then I hit enter. Then I'll go back to my solid color layer and make sure I'm selecting the layer mask, and then I go back to my rectangular marquee tool and select the area which I want to hide out of my solid color layer, and then I press Command or Control I to invert, and then I press Command or Control D to deselect. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop my image a little more. Before I do that, let me zoom out the image a little bit, and then I go back to my crop tool, and then I crop out the image a little more because I need the negative space around the window. So I think something like this. Let me try keeping the window exactly in the middle of the image. I think that will work better. So I think something like this is okay, and then I hit enter. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little adjustment, maybe on the interior background. Let me try and scale it a little more. Let me scale it down a little more, something like this, or even scale up the window, like it needs to be a bit bigger than this. So something like this is okay. and then I hit enter. But let me go back to the interior background and see if I can touch it a little more. Something like this is okay. So the next thing I'm going to do after little adjustment on my layers is I'm going to go back to my files, and then I import this background layer here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it up until it fill up my image, and then I'm going to shift it to the I'm going to shift it on top of the window layer, and then let's rename it to wall because we are going to use it as our wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift it down. Instead of the window layer, I'm going to make sure it's right above my color layer here, and then I'm going to hold Alt and clip it with the solid color layer here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change the blend mode of our wall layer. So I'm going to change it to screen. I think that will work. Let's try different options and see. Screen is usually what works for me, so let's go for screen. And then the next thing I'm going to do is we are going to head over to our interior layer here. So first, before we do anything to it, let's rename it to interior, and then we hit enter. So the first thing we're going to do to it is we are going to add some level of Gaussian blur to the interior. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to filter, and then we go to blur, and then we select Gaussian blur, and then we are going to add radius to somewhere around 5 point something would be fine. Let's keep it at 5.5. I think this is okay. Let's do it before and after. As you can see, our subject has stand out from the interior, so we are going to hit OK. And then the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go over to our wall layer here, and then we are also going to add some level of Gaussian blur to it by going to filter, blur, and then we select Gaussian blur. So for the wall, we are not going to be needing this much blur, so we are going to be using somewhere around 1 point something to 2. So let's keep it at like I think 1.8 would be fine, and then we hit enter. So the next thing we are going to do for the wall, again, it's kind of too bright, so what we are going to do to fix that is we are going to head over to our adjustment layer, and then we select hue and saturation. So before we touch any slider on the hue and saturation layer here, we are going to first make sure we are clipping the hue and saturation layer to the wall layer. How are we going to do that is we are going to click this icon that I'm hovering my mouse around. As you can see, there is an arrow pointing down the wall layer, which means whichever slider we touch on our hue and saturation layer, the effect will be limited to the wall layer here that we clipped the hue and saturation layer on. So what I'm going to do is we are going to start by taking down the lightness to somewhere around let me see, somewhere around 50 to 60 would be fine. So let's keep it around 57. I think this is okay. Let's do it before and after. I think that is the only thing that we need on the hue and saturation layer. So what we are going to do next, we are going to fix the window. As you can see, it's way too bright on the image. So what we are going to do is we are going to select the window layer here, and then we are going to start by adding Gaussian blur to it. First we are going to filter, and then we go to blur, and then we select Gaussian blur. So we are going to be needing somewhere around I think 1.6 something to 2.0 will work. So let's also use 1.8 since we are using 1.8 to our window layer. So what we are going to do next for the window is we are going to add an adjustment layer. So we are going to use hue and saturation, and then we are also going to clip the hue and saturation layer to the window. And then the very first thing we are going to do is we are going to darken the window by taking down our lights to somewhere around 40. I think 48 is okay. And then we are going to take down the color, the saturation a little to somewhere around I think minus 17 is fine. Let's do before and after. Yeah. Alright, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to add some shadows to our window so that you can so that it will look more realistic. So what we are going to do is, looking at this shadow on the window, you realize light is coming from this angle. So what we are going to do is we are going to add some shadows by this side and then by at the bottom of the window. So how are we going to do that is we are going to go over to our window icon here, and then we press Command or Control, and then we click on the icon. Notice it will create a selection on the window. So what we are going to do next is we are going to minus some part from our selection by going to our marquee tool, and then we drag over and then subtract the portion which we don't want it to be part of our selection, like this, as you can see. So after that, what we are going to do is we are going to create an empty layer right below our window layer here. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to press Shift and Delete, and then we go over to black, and then we press OK, and then we press Command or Control D to deselect, and then we move our shadow layer which we created, as you can see. So we are going to move it, and then what we are going to do is we are going to get rid of this inner part of the black that appeared. We are going to get rid of this part of black that appeared inside of our window. So we are going to add we are going to go over to our polygonal lasso tool, and then we select over the area where we want to get rid of, and then we go over to our eraser tool, and then we erase. So I first select the area that I wanted to erase because I want my eraser tool to just be limited to that particular area that I selected, and then we press Command or Control D to deselect, and then we make sure we are selecting our shadow layer here, and then we go to Filter, and then we go to Blur, and then we select Gaussian blur, and then for here we are going to add radius to around, I think 9.9 is okay, and then we go over and play with the opacity and take it down to somewhere like 80 to, I think 85 is fine. So let's do before, after, before and after. If it is too much, you can take it down a little more, as you can see, and then we do before, after, before and after. As you can see, our window is looking more realistic now. Let me take it down a little more, maybe around 50 something. 56 is fine. Let's leave it like that. So let's do before and after again, before, after, before and after. And then if we zoom to this particular edge, yeah, everything is looking fine, and then this area as well. So let's zoom out our image. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to add some drop down shadow on the on the window, because I think it's not proper for us to have uniform light on the window and then on the wall as well. So let's begin with the window. First, we are going to create an adjustment layer above here, and then we go to our curve. So what we are going to do is we are going to clip and limit the curve layer to the window. The effect will just be affecting the window, and then we take it down a little, as you can see. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to my gradient tool here and make sure you are selecting from black to nothing here. So what we are going to do here is we are going to start dragging our gradient tool from this side to this side, as you can see. So let's do before, after, before and after. Let's even reduce it a little bit more, as you can see. Let's do before, after, before and after. I think this is looking more realistic. Let me take down the opacity to like, I think this is okay, before and after. So for the wall, we are going to go over to our wall layer here, and then we also create a curve layer and clip it as well, and then we darken the wall just a little, as you can see. And then we as well go back to our gradient. Now we as well make sure we are selecting our gradient tool here, and then we as well drag our gradient tool on the wall like this, as you can see. So let's do before, after, before and after. I think this is looking so nice. So after that, the next thing we are going to do to this image is we are going to go over to our files, and then we bring in this particular flower here. So let's go back and do some adjustments on the flower. So let's begin by keeping this one here, and then we hit enter, and then we press Command J to duplicate, and then we resize this next one down a little bit and shift it to this side. I think it's better if it stays under the bigger one. So let's even increase its size as well. I think this is okay, and then we duplicate this one again by pressing Command or Control J, and then we move it to the other side of the image. So let's scale this one up. I think it should go a little bigger, like this. Let me take it up a little more. I think this is okay, and then I hit enter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to group them all so that I can easily color grade them. So let me rename the group to flowers, and then let me uncheck this show transformation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my adjustment layer, and then I go to hue and saturation. So for my hue and saturation, before I start tweaking, I'll have to make sure I'm clipping it to the flower folder here, so that the effect will be limited to the flowers as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch my hue and change the color to fit the entire image. So somewhere around 50 to 60 is okay. Let me keep it at 60, and then they are kind of a little too bright, a little brighter. So let me take the lightness to somewhere around 10, or maybe between 10 to 15. So let's keep them around 15. I think this is okay. Let's do before, after, before and after. So for the flowers, I think we are also going to need to add some Gaussian blur to each of them by going to filter, blur, and then we go for Gaussian blur. So what I'm going to do is we are going to add like the same Gaussian blur to all of them. Let's use like 2.5 to each, like, or 2.3. I think this is okay. And then we go to the next one, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, 2.3 as well. We hit OK. And then to the last one, we go to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur as well, 2.3, and then we hit OK. So let's go back and close the folder. So let's do before, after, before, and after. So the next thing we are going to do to this flowers, I think it's okay if we add some fall of shadows to the flowers as well by going to our curve, and then we clip to the flowers as well, and then we add some shadows, and then we as well go to our gradient, and then we drag and erase. So let's do before, after, before, and after. Let's drag a little more, before, after, before, and after. I think this is better. So the next thing we are going to do is I think since light is coming from behind our model through the window, so what we are going to do is we are going to add some split of light around her head tie here. So what we are going to do is we are going to go over to our files here, and then we bring in this white. So what we are going to do is we are going to go over to our subject layer first, and then we drag and drop our light so that it should be right just above our subject layer here, and then we hit OK, and then we rename the layer to light splits, and then we hit enter. So what we are going to do is we are going to move the light until it fits exactly how we want to see it. Like this is okay, and then we clip it to our subject like this. So as you can see, it's only affecting our subject. But the next thing we are going to do is we are going to take down the opacity so that it will look more realistic. Let's do before, after, before, and after. So let's disable the light, before, after, before, and after. Like the light is touching our model a little too much, so let's reduce the size down a little. I think this is okay. Alright, let's do before and after and see. Before, after, before, and after. This is perfectly okay for me. Let me zoom in. Yes, but I think it's better if we stretch the light upward. So this is okay, and then we push it back a little more. Alright, let's do before, after, before, and after. This is okay for me. So the next thing we are going to do now is, let me see. The next thing we are going to do is, like, we are going to create, like, we are going to make the image look like her elbow is out through the window. So how are we going to do this is, let's first go back to our original layer, and then we duplicate it by pressing Command O Ctrl J, and then we take it to the top of our layers here. Let's enable the layer, and then we are going to zoom, and then we select her elbow along with the clothes. So how we're going to do that is we are going to be using our magnetic lasso to here, and then we start selecting the hand. So after we finish selecting the hand, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to add layer mask to the layer, and then if we zoom our image, if we do before and after, you'll realize now our hand is passing out through the window. So let's fix these areas that we are having errors of selection. So we are going to go back to our layer mask, and then we go and select our normal brush and make sure we are having foreground on our normal brush. Then we brush and hide these particular areas. So let's zoom out and see. So what we are going to do to this hand to make it look more realistic is we are going to add some shadows around the elbow here. So how we're going to do that is we are going to create an empty layer just below the hand, and then we go back to our normal brush, make sure we are having black foreground, and then we brush some little level of shadow right under the hand, as you can see. But we are kind of brushing too much, so let's erase these parts. See, let's zoom out and see before, after, before and after. If it is too much, we can reduce the opacity. Alright, I think this is okay, or let's keep it at 90. So let's do before, after, before and after. As you can see, everything is looking more realistic now. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to add color lookup to the image so that we can harmonize the colors on the image. So we are going to color lookup, and then we are going to adjustment layer, and then we go for color lookup, and then we load and navigate to where we kept our color lookup. And then we play around with the opacity, so somewhere around 60. Let's see, before, after, before and after. This is okay for me, and if I feel it's too much on the skin of my model, what I will do is I'll just go to my gradient and make sure I'm on this circular gradient, and that's radial gradient, and then I make sure I'm on my layer mask of the color lookup, and then I drag and clean out that part from the face. So let's do before, after, before and after, while I reduce the opacity a little more. Before, after, before and after. So that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe and like button as it will help in promoting the channel, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so that you won't miss any of my latest content.